Imagine a woman who was born into the highest luxury of the Roman Empire, only to be dragged through the mud as a prisoner of the very barbarians who burned her home to the ground. She didn't just survive, she married her captor, became a queen, then an empress, and ultimately the most powerful woman in the Western world. This is the story of Galla Placidia, the woman who ruled the barbarians and held a collapsing empire together with nothing but her iron will.
In the late 4th century, the Roman Empire was no longer the untouchable titan it once was. It was a house divided, split between East and West, and Galla Placidia was born right into the center of this fracture. She was the daughter of Theodosius the Great, the last man to rule over a truly unified Roman Empire. From the moment she could walk, she was surrounded by the purple robes of royalty and the whispers of court intrigue in Constantinople and Milan.
But the security of her childhood was an illusion. The frontiers were leaking, and the barbarian tribes, groups like the Goths and Vandals, were no longer just raiding the borders. They were looking for a place to call home within the empire's crumbling walls.
When her father died, the empire was split between her two brothers, Arcadius and Honorius. History has not been kind to them, and for good reason. They were weak, indecisive, and easily manipulated. Placidia, even as a young girl, seemed to possess the backbone her brothers lacked. While they hid behind the marshes of Ravenna or the walls of Constantinople, she was in Rome during its darkest hour.
The year was 410. For the first time in 800 years, the city of Rome fell to a foreign invader. Alaric and his Visigoths breached the gates, and the eternal city was put to the sword. It was a psychological blow that echoed across the known world. Amidst the smoke and the looting, the Visigoths found a prize more valuable than all the gold in the temples: the emperor's sister, Galla Placidia. Most royal women in her position would have been forgotten by history, becoming a tragic footnote or a nameless victim, but Placidia was different. For the next several years, she lived as a high-stakes hostage, forced to travel with the Visigothic army as they wandered through Italy and into Gaul. Imagine the transition from the silken cushions of a palace to the rugged, muddy camps of a migrating barbarian nation. Yet, instead of being broken by this experience, she observed. She learned their customs, their language, and their power structures. She realized that the Goths weren't just savages, they were a nation looking for legitimacy. In 414, in a move that shocked the Roman world, she married the new Visigothic king, Ataulf. This wasn't a hidden affair, it was a grand wedding in Narbonne, Gaul. She dressed in the finest Roman silks, while Ataulf wore the traditional Roman toga. He gave her 50 handsome youths dressed in silk, each carrying 2 large bowls, one filled with gold, the other with precious stones, looted from her own city of Rome.
This marriage was a masterpiece of political symbolism. It was an attempt to fuse the Roman and Gothic worlds into one. Ataulf himself reportedly said that he had once wanted to replace Romania with Gothia, but realized the Goths were too wild to be governed by laws. Instead, he sought to use Gothic strength to restore the Roman Empire. Placidia was the bridge. She gave birth to a son, whom they named Theodosius after her father. If that child had lived, the history of Europe might have been completely rewritten, a Gotho-Roman emperor ruling a unified West. But the gods of the 5th century were cruel. The infant Theodosius died, and shortly after, Ataulf was assassinated by a rival in a stable. Placidia was suddenly a widow in a hostile camp. The new king, Sigeric, treated her with calculated cruelty, forcing the sister of the Roman emperor to walk 12 miles on foot in front of his horse as he rode in triumph. It was a public humiliation intended to break her spirit. She didn't break.
Within 7 days, Sigeric was killed, and the next king, Wallia, realized that Placidia was worth more to him as a bargaining chip than a prisoner. After 6 years among the barbarians, she was traded back to her brother, Honorius, in exchange for 600,000 measures of grain. She returned to the Roman court, not as a victim, but as a seasoned diplomat who understood the enemy better than any general in Ravenna.
However, her brother Honorius was not interested in her political mind. He wanted her as a tool. He forced her into a marriage with his top general, Constantius III. By all accounts, Placidia hated Constantius. He was a gruff, bug-eyed soldier who stood in stark contrast to her Gothic husband. Yet she did her duty. She bore him 2 children, including the future emperor Valentinian III. For a brief moment, her husband was elevated to co-emperor, making Placidia an Augusta, an empress in her own right. But Constantius died less than a year later, leaving her once again a widow in a court filled with vultures.
The relationship between Placidia and her brother Honorius then took a bizarre and dark turn. Rumors of an inappropriate, perhaps even incestuous, affection between the two began to circulate. When that affection curdled into a violent feud, Placidia found herself accused of conspiring with the Goths she once lived with. She was forced to flee with her children to the court of her nephew in Constantinople.
She was in exile, but her story was far from over. In 423, Honorius died, and a common clerk named Johannes seized the Western throne. This was Placidia's moment. She convinced the Eastern Emperor to give her an army to reclaim the West for her young son. She sailed across the sea, survived a shipwreck she attributed to the protection of St. John the Evangelist, and captured Ravenna. Johannes was executed, and her 6-year-old son, Valentinian III, was crowned emperor. But everyone knew who was truly in charge. For the next 25 years, Galla Placidia ruled the Western Roman Empire as regent. This was perhaps the most difficult period in Roman history. The empire was being torn apart by 3 powerful generals, Aetius, Bonifacius, and Felix, Vandals in North Africa, the most fertile province of the empire, and did everything in her power to keep the administrative machinery of Rome humming while the military was in chaos.
She wasn't just a politician, she was a builder. She transformed the city of Ravenna into a jewel of the late antique world. She built churches and basilicas, filling them with the most breathtaking mosaics the world had ever seen. Even today, if you visit the mausoleum of Galla Placidia in Ravenna, you can see her legacy. Beneath a ceiling of deep indigo glass, decorated with golden stars that seem to shimmer in the low light, you feel the weight of her presence. It is a space of quiet, indestructible beauty, created by a woman who spent most of her life in the middle of a war zone. Her final years were marred by the same family drama that had defined her life. Her daughter, Honoria, in an act of defiance against a forced marriage, sent her signet ring to Attila the Hun, asking for his help. Attila interpreted this as a marriage proposal and used it as an excuse to invade the Western Empire. Placidia had to watch as the world she worked so hard to stabilize was threatened by the most feared man in history.
Galla Placidia died in Rome in the year 450, just before Attila's ultimate invasion, and only 26 years before the final fall of the Western Roman Empire. She is often forgotten in the shadow of the great Caesars, but her life is a testament to the power of the human spirit. She was a woman who was bought and sold, humiliated and exiled, yet she rose to command the very men who sought to own her. She was the last true empress of a dying world, a bridge between the ancient glory of Rome and the rising power of the barbarian nations that would become Europe. If you want to discover more hidden figures who shaped the course of history, subscribe.